What's going on, Ron? The Buckeye roast is back in another morning. I cut you off.
Good morning, good morning. Yeah, we are back for another episode of the Buckeye Roast. Q is fixing his camera. It's becoming a daily
Bro,
occurrence.
I'm becoming shorter every day. Like I'm fixing you like
my, my co-host is shrinking. He's gonna be gone. I'm just gonna be doing the show with a purple light by the end of the season. But we are here for another episode of the Buckeye Roast, and guest week continues. Another action-packed show. Big shout out to Chimdi Chekla joining us yesterday, man. Wow, it's been a long day, I guess. But yeah, Chimdi joining us yesterday on the pod yesterday. A lot of good discussions about Coach Tressel, the current state of the Buckeye program, Ryan Day, all kinds of good stuff. So if you missed that show yesterday, be sure to check that out. And a big thank you to Chimdi for joining us. Make sure you check out his podcast, Believe in Buckeyes podcast on the Believe Network. So make sure if you haven't checked that out, you like, comment, subscribe, and show some support. We really appreciate him joining us yesterday. Q.
Sure. Yeah, but we got some special guests today. So let's go ahead and get them in here from the best damn pod in the land. We got Chad and Dan up here.
What's up, fellas?
Yeah, what's going on?
How's it going? Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. We become big fans now that you guys have rebooted again for the season and try to catch you every morning. Yesterday was great. It's always great to hear from former players, get a little bit of inside info.
Absolutely. We want to let the audience know a little bit about you guys. We met on the timeline. I've seen Chad on the timeline probably about as long as I've been a Buckeye fan, one of the first Buckeye fans to really support the content that we do. Always seeing him in the notifications, and then you guys started your pod. So tell us a little bit about your guys' Buckeye background and how your guys' pod got started.
Okay, sure. Well, I actually had a pod before this pod that was just me, but I've been a Buckeye fan. My mother-in-law and my dad are Buckeyes, so I've been to more games than I can count since the time I was, like 7 or 8 years old. I was really trying to figure that out when my first game was, but so yeah, it's in the blood. I've had it, done it for a really long time. Love it. I love the Buckeyes, obviously. And then I put a flyer out on Twitter one day, and I was like, hey, I'm adding a co-host. Is anybody interested? And Dan messaged me, and we had a Teams call, and we just hit it off. It was like we'd known each other for like 50 years or something. And so that's how our pod came to be. The name is a tribute to the band, actually. So the Best Damn Pod in the Land is a tribute to the best damn band in the land. And then Dan, I can hand over to you, man, for anything about your history and everything.
Yeah, no. So I wasn't really up to speed on the whole Buckeye pod world, up until probably about 18 months ago, and I started listening to all of them. And then a certain Burn the Boats tweet that I saw on Instagram directed me over to Twitter, and I saw Chad's post, and I was always interested to see what this was all about. But yeah, I mean, I'm originally from right outside Cleveland. I lived in Brooklyn, Ohio until I was about 13. And then I moved out to where Q is currently residing out there in Arizona. Was out there for a while, and yeah, huge Buckeye fan. Favorite memory, 03 Natty. I lived out there at the time, and it's a story for another day, but huge memory for me out there. Got my brother out there, and we were able to be there for the game.
Don't give away Q's city. The groupies will be after him.
If I had it
looking for
him. I will definitely appreciate you guys joining us. I gotta keep tradition and give a shout out to the first person in the chat. Y'all let Gmo in here first and let him get the first chat in. So shout out to Gmo. Everybody go check out the Category 6 podcast. They're doing good work over there. So don't let it happen again. Don't let Gmo be first. But definitely shout out to him. Everybody go ahead and like that video. And if you're on Twitter, go ahead and hit that like, retweet. If you are in the community, do that as well. If you're not, let us know so we can get you in there. And podcasts. Don't forget Apple Podcasts. You got an iPhone. I know most of y'all do. Go down there, leave a 5-star review. And then on Spotify, do the same. Ron, you got any notes before we jump into it?
No, let's get it started.
Okay, so I got some pre-show topics for college football news. The All-American or the preseason All-American list dropped yesterday. So I'm going to give you who made it from Ohio State. We have Caleb Downs, Denzel Burke, Donovan Jackson, Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson, Tyleek Williams, and Quinshon Judkins. So those were the 6 that made either the first team, second team, or third team. And I didn't know they had this list, but JJ made the preseason freshman All-American list, which isn't that just recruiting rankings? How you make that list?
Well, I think
Yeah,
Caleb Downs was a preseason All-American, freshman All-American last year, I believe.
Yeah, I did not know that list existed. But so my question, I'll start with you, Chad. Who on the team is most likely to make the All-American list at the end of the season that was not among this 6 of Downs, Burke, Jackson, Egbuka, Henderson, Tyleek Williams, and Quinshon Judkins?
Oof. Davis Digbenosen.
Okay. Give me some reason.
Yeah. I just think he's poised for a breakout year, and I probably stole Dan's answer. I see him glaring at me, but no, I think he's probably the most overlooked part of our secondary. And Dan and I hammered on this on one of our shows that, like, he kind of, when he came from the SEC, kind of changed the culture in that room a little bit. He's Dan always likes to say he's kind of handsy, but like he's a dog, dude, and he just, I think he is poised for a huge year. I like how physical he is, and Denzel Burke gets all the pub, and then we bring in Caleb Downs, and you bring back the rest of that secondary. He just kind of gets overlooked, and I think he's going to have a huge year. I just like the player that he is. I like how physical he is. I like his build. He's long and lean for a corner. Big year coming for Iggy.
Okay, Dan, go to you next.
Yeah, you didn't take it. I was worried you would. My my dark horse is Josh Simmons.
That's another good one.
Haven't been able to see him during those first 4 practices. What he's done with his body, he always had the tools, right? He's got the feet, he's got the hands. Very, very athletic, very talented. He was just in a bad program, and his development from year over year, compared to what his narrative was coming into last season, has been great. But what he's done with his body, I mean, I heard somebody say he dropped 17 points in body fat. Like that's
crazy.
He looks like an offensive tackle. He looks like a Paris Johnson now when you see him out there. So that's my dark horse. And I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, I mean, if Justin Fry is able to get Josh Simmons playing at a high caliber level, All-American level, that's definitely another notch in his belt as far as the development argument against, his recruiting struggles. We're going to get to that a little bit later in the show. I'm going to go with the chat. Punk jumped the gun on it, and I would go with Sonny Styles. We've heard a lot of hype about what he can be at the linebacker position. I saw him during the spring. I thought that he was a little thin for the linebacker room. You see what he looks like now. You see that he's really committed to transforming his body. And I feel like you make that argument about a lot of people. It seems like there's a real mentality and focus on getting their bodies right for the season. You saw the transformation Will Howard's made. You see all of these guys are developing during the offseason and able to transform their bodies. You hear what Dan said about Josh Simmons being able to drop that body fat. This transformation, a big hats off to Mick and what he's been able to do, because it seems like everybody around the Woody this year has really got their body right and made a commitment to this strength program. So that's awesome to see. I definitely think both of those guys are great choices. Iggy, a physical corner, I feel like it gets slept on how important he is in the run game. And Josh Simmons, a guy that, it'd be a scary place where this offensive line was if Justin Fry didn't go out and grab him out of the transfer portal.
One of the I don't know if you caught this yesterday, but the interview with Caleb Downs, he talked a lot about Lathan Ransom. And so that's somebody that gets slept on too, since we're on that topic. I could see him ending up a second team All-American.
Absolutely, and I feel like the injury bug has hampered the hype around Lathan Ransom. He's been hurt twice now, but when he's been on the field, he's been an absolute baller, and that's definitely a guy that has been being slept on.
Yeah. Do you think, Ron, for Sonny Styles, do you think the rise of Arvell Reese, do you think he'll be on the field enough to be an All-American? Just because the way that Laurinaitis has said he's going to rotate the linebackers, whoever has the best week, that I just was curious.
I feel like they say they're going to rotate. I don't think it's going to be enough to impact Sonny's All-American opportunities, especially if they're getting out early on teams. I feel like if the defense has a cushion that Knowles will try to get guys in then. But as far as meaningful minutes that take away from Sonny, I feel like as long as the game's on the line, Sonny's going to have his snaps available to get it done.
Yeah, that was more for cannon fodder than anything. We know they don't rotate.
Never.
Yeah, you saw my guy Arvell Reese. Keep buying that stock. That would have been
man.
Q's gonna be loaded the way the stock keeps rising on Arvell Reese. We heard the other day from a parent on the team that Arvell Reese just been absolutely balling this year, like completely transformed his body, hit a growth spurt during the off season. So he said he's looking like an absolute freak out there, and they wouldn't be surprised if he got on the field. So it'll be interesting to see if Arvell is able to find those minutes, especially with the lack of rotation that tends to happen in that linebacker room.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed to seeing them line him up on the edge,
If he keeps growing, it sounds like that's where he's going to end up.
Don't say it. Don't say that word.
He definitely. We don't want to hear the Jack word associated with him, because I feel like that's the kiss of death. If they say Jack or consistency around your name, you might as well just say bench.
I'm out. We talked the Jack. Oh gosh, whatever.
All right, so
it's too early for shots, guys. Come on.
All right, so let's hop into it. So we had Will Howard named the starter. So I will start there. Just give me your short instant reaction. I'll start with Dan this time. Your instant reaction. Will Howard named the starter. We had the QB battle that we heard about. It was, guys were back and forth. Heard about the scrimmage. Will Howard comes out. Give me your instant reaction. Will Howard named the starter.
Well, those of you that have, that know me from the timeline in our podcast, that I've been a huge Will Howard fan from day one, and I've said he was going to be the starter from the get-go. No, I mean, listen, it's to be expected, right? I think that going into camp, I think he got a pass on the spring for reasonable reasons. I think going into the fall camp, he was really going to have to turn the ball over a lot for Devin to have a chance to take it from him. To Devin's credit, he competed hard, and I don't think it was as easy of a clear-cut decision as Ryan may have made it seem like in the press conference last week. But, I've seen some people recently questioning what he's going to do to the offense and that he's not going to be any better than Honda. And that's just foolish. That's silly. I mean, Will Howard is really, really good in the RPO game. He's elite in the red zone with that RPO game. And he has a pocket presence about him and a comfort level in the pocket that only comes with 30-plus career starts that just didn't exist on the team last year. So I'm excited about it. I mean, with the weapons that he has around him, in Chip we trust, with the game that Chip's going to call, I think it's going to be really, really exciting. My biggest concern, and I've said this from the get-go, and I'm not going to back off of it until I see differently, is just downfield passing and accuracy. If we're down by a score with 2 minutes left and we got to go 85 yards, is he going to be able to do it? He's done it before, but he's also not done it before. So that's my biggest concern. He also has a tendency to have a really dud of a game. Hopefully this environment, minimizes that risk.
Yeah. Chad.
I took a lot of flack for this comparison, but in my mind, Will Howard is a newer version of JT Barrett, because Barrett didn't have a great downfield ball. Like he was okay. He wasn't elite. He wasn't CJ Stroud. And even Justin Fields had a better downfield ball, but he could move the football and he hurt you with his legs and his pocket presence. I'm not comparing Urban Meyer's offense to Ryan Day's offense. I'm not saying it's going to be QB power on every 3rd and 2. Not even a little bit, but I do think that their game resembles each other with their ability to manipulate and work the pocket and pick up 5 or 6 yards when you have to. Was I surprised? Absolutely not. Smart money was on him, even though I guess I would say he was going through growing pains in the spring. CJ Stroud has talked about how complex and how detailed the Ryan Day offense is. So coming from a program, even as with the lure of Kansas State, from when Bill Snyder was there, and they've had some really good runs in the past. Ryan Day is thought of as an offensive guru, an offensive mind, and a quarterback guru. And, there are complexities, and I don't know how else you want to say it, to his offense. And so, yeah, it takes a while to pick that up. And Dan hit it on the head. I think Will Howard is going to have be a turnover machine in camp, even as good as our defense is. Ryan Day was not going to, accept turnovers. So,
how do you
go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, how do you think that Will fits what Chip Kelly wants to do? And with this change in offense and scheme, I mean, I know it's still Ryan Day's scheme, but we do have a new play caller. Do you expect that Will Howard fits this team better than Kyle did last year? I know Kyle wasn't necessarily what everyone expected after having Dwayne Haskins followed by followed by Justin Fields, followed by CJ Stroud. Everyone's expecting this offensive explosion, a high-flying offense. But when you look back at last season, we were only 6 points away from beating the national championship. If Kyle is able to get it done last year, maybe the Buckeyes are competing for a national championship. Do you think a guy like Will in that spot would have been able to get it done? And now that he's here, does he have what it takes to get it done?
Unequivocally, I am 100% convinced and adamant that if Will Howard was at the helm last year in that game against Michigan, that we would have won that game. The type of game that it was played into the hands of a run heavy, strong, run game. I just, I don't see us, going 3 and out as much as we did. And I think when we get in the red zone, we would have been a completely different team. So yeah, I have complete confidence that if it's the same type of game, that we come out on top with Will Howard at quarterback.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I think if Will Howard's the quarterback last year, I think that's a completely different football game. And quite honestly, we had a chance, and they didn't do it. And I'll take it all the way back to Kyle McCord in high school. I've postured that his star rating was because he was thrown to Marvin Harrison Jr. and maybe he wasn't as talented as people thought. So,
yeah,
I don't want to rag on the guy. I don't, but it certainly, at least during his time in Columbus, really didn't translate to the field. And I thought, when I watched him against Akron, when CJ had the hurt shoulder, that maybe, he would be very, very good. And maybe he will be at Syracuse, but it certainly didn't translate to the field last year.
You better be careful, man. There might be a certain patriarch end up in your DMs if this gets out.
I heard it's actually back in Ohio State fans' DMs. So yeah, I would definitely be careful.
Yeah, I have everyone named Derek blocked. So.
Dan, you've been to a few practices. You've gotten to see Will interact with the team. How does it feel like the team is responding to Will and his leadership?
I was at the first 4 practices, so it was pretty even as far as reps were going at that point. I mean, they were rolling all 5 guys. I've got a little bit of a report on that now that we can get to later as to what they're doing with reps. But those first 4 practices, it was pretty even, Steven, as far as reps go. So I don't know how much he really had an opportunity to take over the team at that point. But you could tell that he's got a comfort level of, being in a huddle and leading a huddle and getting the guys where they need to be and taking control. I think the buzzword this year is command. Last year it was consistency with the quarterbacks. This year it's command is the buzzword you hear in all the pressers. You can see where he was going to develop that with those guys. And, unless Jerry Emig is running all sorts of interference and boot camps in regards to pressers, they all seem to be, impressed with what he's done, and they've really taken to him.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear. A lot of the questions last year were about Kyle's leaderships. It felt like he didn't have that energy around the team. Cam talked about it a lot on Buckeye BS, as far as it felt like the team was taking the identity of the leadership, which was Ryan Day, who usually shows you. I mean, you could see it on his face in the timeline. I mean, during the game, that Ryan Day gets tight during these tight games against Michigan, against the Georgias. I mean, you see the Georgia energy, but against Michigan, the head's down in the play calling sheet, and you don't feel that energy. You don't feel that fire. And same with Kyle, not a very vocal guy. That was something that they mentioned a lot last year. But with a guy like Will Howard, someone that, I mean, I've heard the phrase thrown around a lot with Will is gamer. And I feel like that's kind of a blanket term for a guy that's not necessarily your prototypical quarterback or what you're looking for, but just goes out there and gets it done. It may not always look pretty in practice, but when the lights come on, they go out there and get it done.
Yeah, the vibe around him compared to Kyle is night and day. It's not even close. To be fair, it's different. It's completely different when you compare Devin to Kyle. You know, just completely different personas. They have the quarterback swag that this team was lacking last year.
We've also seen a change at for the play caller. I mean, we have a new quarterback, we have a new play caller, so lots of change around this offense. What are your guys' expectations and thoughts of the Chip Kelly hire? I mean, first we thought Bill O'Brien was going to be the guy. We get gifted Julian Sayin during the offseason because of the hire. He runs off the Boston College before spring camp even starts. Your thoughts on Chip Kelly, the play caller, and how that changes the identity of this offense?
I would just go to think back to Chip Kelly at Oregon. Don't think UCLA. And even though in UCLA they had a good run game, I think that Chip Kelly being able to just be an offensive innovator, and free him up from doing all the other things for a head coach is scary. Dan and I have parroted this on our show a few times. He and I met up at the spring game, and they came out in a wing tee with 3 running backs for the first play of the game. And I looked at Dan and he looked at me, and we were like, this is going to be fun, guys. And that's all I can say. Like, Chip Kelly's not afraid to, pull anybody, crack back with a wide receiver. It's going to be really, really fun. And the thing that I loved the most was hearing Ryan Day saying, I'm not going to lay awake at night worrying about what I'm going to do for 3rd and 2 on my own 40-yard line with 2 minutes left. Chip gets to do that now. And so that in and of itself frees Ryan Day up to do so much more. And sure, he can have his influence. It's the Ryan Day offense. But man, if I took anything away from this hire, and it took me forever to talk myself into the Bill O'Brien hire. I kept saying, well, if he's good enough for Belichick, he's good enough for Saban, then he's probably good enough for us. And I was not on the Bill O'Brien train. I was having a very hard time with it. Dan was trying to push me onto the caboose, but yeah, I'm all in on Chip Kelly.
If Chip doesn't run stretch to the boundary on the first play of the season, I'm going to be very disappointed. I can actually see him. He's got the type of personality that would actually do that, right? I mean, these guys hear what people say outside the Woody. It gets back to him. That would be humorous. But yeah, I mean, listen, he is a master innovator. I can't imagine how much fun he's having with what he has to work with on this roster. I mean, the closest he's probably had to this was when he was with the Eagles, right? It's just so many different options. And the feedback that we're getting, this was coming out of spring. I got a comment coming out of spring that the stuff he was doing in the run game, as far as schemes and everything else like that, was next level and stuff that some guys hadn't seen before. So I can only imagine now that he's getting more comfortable and they're getting more of an install that it's just going to be even that much more dramatic. It's going to be a lot of fun watching him play chess with some of these guys that are on our schedule.
Yeah, we talked about it before the season started when Ron and I just got back to doing the show, and it was like we had all these transfers in and all these players, and he's like, well, who are you looking most forward to seeing? And I was like, man, Chip Kelly.
Absolutely.
Like, give me that innovation, what he could do Man, I haven't seen a dude take a slant at Ohio State to the crib in a long time. He'll get playmakers in space. He'll use the speed we have. That was the guy I was most excited to like. He was wearing a helmet. I'm most excited to see him play with this Ohio State offense.
Yeah, and going back to Will and the downfield passing thing, I have all the faith in the world that Chip is going to scheme up some easy shots downfield. He did it with DTR at UCLA. So it's not like that's not going to be part of our game plan. It'll be there. And like I said, my motto this year is in Chip we trust.
Yeah, and I had a question for both of you. So we touched on Will Howard before and Chip Kelly and his innovation to the offense. Ron and I and Mike all had a heated debate on Buckeye BS about the quarterback position and kind of the standard at Ohio State. And at the time I had said, oh, the standard is first rounder, which that might have been a little much. But I do believe the standard of Ohio State for quarterback has been one of the best players in the nation, going all the way back to Troy Smith and all the way through. So do you think with Chip Kelly's influence, I don't think anybody believes Will Howard was one of the best players in the nation at his time at Kansas State. I've never heard that. Do you think with the influence of Chip Kelly in this offense, the playmakers around him, Will Howard at the end of the season, you'll look at him as one of the best players in the country?
I think so. And that might surprise some people hearing that come from me in particular, but I do. I think a lot of people are going to compare him to Bo Nix, right? Bo Nix was awful at Auburn. He went to Oregon. Now, Bo had 2 years at Oregon, but who would have thunk Bo Nix would be a first-round pick? And I'm not making that call on Will Howard. I'm just saying that the improvement year over year with the personnel and the scheme and guys like Ryan Day and Chip Kelly can really accentuate or expose him in a good way. I think they can really highlight his strengths and minimize his weaknesses. And I think that I almost picked him as a dark horse for All-American when we were talking here at the beginning, but I didn't want to shock too many people that it's early in the morning. I think the sky's the limit in this system.
Chad.
Well, I jokingly put a graphic together with "I Can Be Your Hero, Baby" by Enrique Iglesias with Will Howard underneath of it, because he said he doesn't have to be a hero, and he's right. With the amount of talent on this offense, he just has to exist within the system, make the right reads, make the right throws. And as they used to say in Friday Night Lights, he just has to exist the 2 seconds between the snap and getting Booby Miles the football. And with Trey and Q in the backfield, and you add in Brandon Ennis and Emeka Egbuka, who probably will do some stuff in the run game, and then the talent of Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. There's so much talent on this offense that, and I know in the past it's been the trenches that has been our downfall, and so I expect our offensive line to be improved, but Will Howard will go as our offensive line goes. And that's just how it is. And so I do think that he can, if he plays within the system, plays within himself, certainly could end up, being, I'm probably a second day pick in the NFL draft, but there's a reason that Lincoln Riley wanted him. There's a reason that Ryan Day wanted him, and both those guys are known as quarterback gurus. So there's something about him, his frame, his arm, whatever it is. And there's a lot, but I think that, yes, I think he is an improvement over what we had last year. And I think that at the end of the year, we'll be happy that he's there.
Before we get to the next question, there's 175 people in here. Make sure you go ahead and smash that like button. If you're watching on Twitter, go ahead and throw a like and retweet on that video. If you catch us in the community, make sure you like that. It really helps us get a push on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, I know there's about 50 people in here. Smash that like button. It's a goal of ours to get to 50 likes before the live show wraps. That really gives us a great push during the day. So if you guys can go ahead and throw a like on that video, we absolutely appreciate that. We've been talking a lot about Chip Kelly, and it seems like when we talk about Chip Kelly, everything is prefaced with the run game. But I want to ask you guys, what does Chip Kelly's addition to this team mean for Zone 6 this year? Do you guys expect the same sort of offensive explosion from the wide receivers? And if it doesn't look the same as it did when Ryan Day was calling the plays, does it make Brian Hartline's pitch more difficult to add guys to this room when the offense, if the offense doesn't necessarily look like it did under Dwayne, Justin, and CJ?
Yeah, I have full faith in it. I'll just look at 2019 as an example. I know that people are talking about run game. I've heard some people think that we're going to run, 60, 65% of the game. I mean, when we put up 3,500 yards and JK had 2,000, we still only ran the ball 49% of the time. I mean, Ryan's a pass first guy. Ryan's not turning over the reins to Chip entirely in as much as people think he is. I think it's going to be a nice marriage. I think there's plenty to go around. I think the biggest question is going to be how long do they stay in the game, to be able to get fed, in a lot of these games this year. So I think that I think people will be surprised at how open the passing game still is, even though Chip is run focused.
Chad?
Yeah. So the thing about Chip Kelly is he loves mesh routes. He's big on the screen game. He wants the wide receivers to block. So I don't think it changes the pitch for Brian Hartline, because Hartline's going to coach you up and get you ready for the NFL. I know Terry McLaurin didn't go in the first round, but look at Terry McLaurin. I know he came in under Zach Smith. I understand that, but he finished under Brian Hartline, and he's an elite NFL wide receiver. So do I think it impacts his pitch? No, not even a little bit. You're coming here and you're getting you're playing for Ohio State. You're playing for, and the way that the new playoff structure is, you're going to see the playoffs. You're going to be, you have a chance to play for a natty. You're playing under Brian Hartline, who played in the NFL. You're playing one of the most elite offenses in college football. And regardless of who the play caller is and what that looks like, whether it's mesh routes, rub routes, or slants, all day long, I don't think that I loved the quick hitters to Garrett Wilson from CJ Stroud as much as anybody else when he would take him to the house, and Chris Olave. But, you also, if Will Howard's your quarterback and we have a concern about the deep ball, then maybe, I'd rather hit on 65 or 70% of my passes inside of 20 yards than hit on 20% of my passes over. So no, I don't think it really impacts it at all.
Yeah,
I think the room is deep, and that's where that's why you see what you see this year with some of the wide receiver recruiting.
Yeah, I had made the argument. I think Chip coming in as far as zone six maybe opens it up for guys who maybe aren't the prototype that Brian Hartline likes, where you do maybe everything right. But those special traits of God, we've heard all offseason. I know Mick hypes these stats up to make them unbelievable. The guy's running 25 and 26 miles an hour. We hear that every day. Will Howard's running 28 miles an hour. He beat Noah Lyles. Gene Ballard's running 30. But I do think Chip coming with guys like Mylan Graham or Jaden Ballard, these guys who we know have exceptional speed, but just weren't doing all things right. I think it creates an opening for them to say, all right, maybe you can't, do the full route tree, but hey, I'm going to use you on screens. I'm going to use you on reverses. We've seen that in the spring game with Jaden Ballard. He ran a reverse, and I'm like, okay, we do got something here. So I think that's another impact that Chip's going to have on this room of just getting those playmakers in space, even out wide.
Chad's laughing because he's a huge Jaden Ballard guy.
He's from my area.
I'm a little disappointed, man. You had a complete opening there for the boys A-Train reference. You're always dropping your boy. I mean, I heard Compound V the other day. I thought you were gonna capitalize on that right there.
Well, I do have a saying around here that people might know, and it's called "too fast to play here." And I feel like there's a lot of guys who have been on that list for a while where it's like, oh, he's this fast, offensive and defensively. Where I'm like, oh, he's just too fast to play here. That's why he either didn't commit here or he's not seeing the field. So that's usually the one I go with. Hope we have into that this season.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, I hope they find a role for Jaden Ballard, just because
better not be punt return.
Oh, here we go. I get it enough on our own show, Dan. I don't need it on theirs.
You know how I feel about fair catches at the 5-yard line.
Yeah. They're perfect.
Well, hopefully with the new, lack thereof special teams coordinator, maybe it's addition by subtraction and our special teams gets better without a coordinator. I know Ryan Day delegated those duties. I believe that James Laurinaitis is in charge of kickoff. That's the one that we want to get to next. James Laurinaitis becomes a full-time position coach on the staff. Your thoughts there on the linebacker rotation and just the decision to make James Laurinaitis a full-time member of the staff. We've heard the praises of him on the recruiting trail. You look at the class he's been able to put together. It looks like the best linebacker class that has come to Columbus in the Ryan Day era. So just your thoughts on the addition of James Laurinaitis and what he adds to this defensive staff.
Go ahead, Dan.
All right, cool. Yeah, no, I'm really, really excited about it. I mean, how can you not be? He's already made an impact on the recruiting trail. I love his mentality. I think he's got instant street cred, both in the room and on the trail. And he seems to be true to his word. I mean, he came out of spring and he said, the rotation's going to change daily based on who performs the best. He goes, I can't, if you crap the bed for 3 days in practice during the week, he goes, do you think you deserve to start? No. And I think we got a little glimpse of it this week. It seemed like Arvell started to get some run with the ones, with some of the clips that we've seen, coming off that day of being named Silver Bullet of the day. So I just think he's got so much knowledge and so much credibility that I think the players really, really respond to him. And it was a great ad. I just wish it didn't take as long as it did. It shouldn't have. I understand why it did, but it shouldn't have.
Chad.
Yeah, I agree with what Dan said as far as James Laurinaitis. I don't get why it took as long as it did to hire him. I don't know why Ryan Day waited as long as he did. But having him in the room is incredible. I want to be careful because we took a lot of heat when we said this is the best linebacking recruiting class that we've gotten in quite some time, because people didn't like that we were saying that because we got we had Sonny Styles and a couple other guys come in but yeah, just let's stack guys on top of guys like we are in the secondary, and I think that's the plan with James. I like the way he's going to do rotations. I think that one of the great things is that he played at an elite level in the NFL, and it's some of these guys some guys that played can't coach. They just aren't, it's not their forte, but James has a way. If you've ever talked to him, he's a really incredible guy. I have one autographed football and it's from him. And he's just a really genuine down home dude. And he really relates with the players. I think a lot of James Laurinaitis. He as well as Bobby Carpenter. I had a chance to meet them both, and just really genuine dudes. And I think that's going to change the linebacking core for the very near and well into the future, as long as he sticks around, which I hope they keep him forever. So.
Yeah, I've never had the opportunity to speak with James Laurinaitis, but if I do, I'll have to ask him to unblock me on Twitter. So,
okay.
What'd you do?
Hey, Ron, what did you say to?
I committed. I committed the unforgivable sin of asking for him to play CJ Hicks. That is a blockable offense. So, anyone in Buckeye Nation, if you're a CJ Hicks fan, don't express that on the timeline or it'll get you blocked.
But I want to chime in there. Yeah, another thing I always say on this show is I want my linebackers to return punts and kicks. a couple of classes ago, I seen a Georgia linebacker do it on his huddle tape, and I was like, yeah, I need that on my football team. So you look at this linebacker roster. It's straight athletes out here that he has, and a lot of things he can do. So for James Laurinaitis, I am looking to finally have guys flying all over the field, look a part of this defense. Because I thought last year when Sonny Styles, they played him in the box some to go along with the linebackers, and it was like he was on the right side, the play would go to the left, and he'd run past Tommy and steal it and make the play. And I was like, yeah, we need some upgrade here at athleticism a little bit. So I'm definitely looking forward to that and what he's doing on the trail, obviously going into Florida. going into Texas. I got to agree with you there. The room trajectory looks up, and I love hearing that. The best guys are going to play week after week. No more you go out and have a bad game and you're bulletproof. And I think we've seen that a lot around this team. I say this all the time when I do my shows with Chris. I'm like, Chris, who's lost a position battle at Ohio State? Like, who's the last person to lose one? I can't name it, via injury. I can't think of a younger guy who's actually unseated, an older guy who was returning. Like I said, I think Carson Hinsman may be the first guy to not return and have his starting spot in who knows how long. So the impact of James Laurinaitis, I think, will be felt on this team.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I agree with you. So, Q, we talked before the show. I'm a big believer in Arvell Reese, and so seeing him getting some run and flying to the football and the elite athleticism is important. And I think Petty John is one of those, as well as TJ Alford. When we were recruiting Alford, he was the number one linebacker that I was watching. I was like, man, I hope we get that guy. And yeah, so I could see one of them returning punts. That would be interesting.
That is Q's favorite concept of a linebacker that's athletic enough to return punts. I mean, we're a little short here on time, so we're gonna have to spare Justin Fry for the day unless Okay, the floor is yours. I was gonna jump right towards lying season and hope for the Buckeye fans about how great this season's gonna go, and I figured if we give the guy a break. We've been very tough on him the past week, but what would a show? It feels like he's becoming the new Parker Fleming of this show. So the floor is your guys. Is the seat getting hot for Justin Fry?
Here's the $1 million question. I think is he today or tomorrow with the beat?
I'm not sure.
So he's this week. It's going to be really interesting to see what sort of interferences run and what sort of questions he gets, because we all know it's going to be, if somebody asks a hard question, I'll be really, really surprised. I'm sure Emig is running interference and saying, like, listen, this isn't the format for it. And they'll fall in line. They'll listen. But listen, man, it's not just about the numbers. It's about the approach and the strategy, right? And is it Jackson Lloyd that committed to Alabama?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just using him as an example, right? He sends out a minimum number of offers. We don't get the guys that we want. And then he sends out a flurry of offers. That kid made a trip to campus within a week. And then a week later, he commits to Alabama. Does that turn out differently if we're in on him a year earlier? Like, the whole strategy needs to change. I'm not going to beat the dead horse. It's like I told Chad yesterday, the horse is already glue at this point. It's just the strategy needs to change, and I don't understand it. I just don't understand it.
Let's say, Chad, before you answer, I'll throw this question in there, and Dan, you feel free to respond to this too. We talked about this a lot on this show of playing on the field and then recruiting. And if your guys, no matter who you get, if they look good on the field, is that enough to keep your job? And obviously for Perry Eliano, his crew played really well last season. He did not keep his job. So I don't know if things can be different for Justin Fry, but I'll leave it to you there. Do you think if they play well enough on the offensive line, it's good enough to keep his job, or does he have to recruit?
So yes, he has to recruit. I think we need to rethink a little bit about the offensive line and what it is and how long it takes to develop those guys. And I know that you can't pick up and put there's not another David Sanders in this class. He's a day one starter, but there's maybe one of those, two at most per class. Those are one of ones. So somebody asked me about the Armstrong twins, and they're growing, and I think they factor into 2025. But yeah, performance is huge. Getting those guys ready is huge. But 3 and 4 stars, that's okay. The 5-star offensive lineman, that's great nationally. It looks good on your recruiting board. But that's a developmental position. Those kids, what happens to your body between 18 and 20 or 21, as far as going from, a young man to a man, and those are men on the offensive line. That's a big deal. And so I'm struggling with, I feel like if he has a really good, if our offensive line has an amazing year and they're grinding and they're winning, and let's say they win the Joe Moore Award, it's really tough to get rid of the guy that helped you do that. On the flip side, though, you got to be able to close on some of these top tier recruits, or you're really going to, you can't wait 3 years every time you get a recruit, unfortunately. That's my 2 cents.
So I've always thought that the Perry Eliano can't recruit was nothing more than a smokescreen. Knowles wanted one of his guys in that room with him. That's all it to me, because if you look at Eliano, his group played well, they performed, and look at the guys he recruited. I mean, you got McLean, Bonzu, Roker. I guess Roker is an MG guy, but
Hartford.
Hartford. I mean, I don't buy the Perry Eliano couldn't recruit thing. I think that was a smokescreen that Ryan did to protect Knowles. Knowles wanted his guy. I mean, Gary is Knowles' guy. He knows the defense like the back of his hand. He earned his right to go in there and say, I want my guy after last season. And I think that's what happened. I think it would be really, really hard to get rid of Fry if the line performs to the level that we're hearing it's going to. And quite honestly, that's only going to help recruiting, right? Unless it truly is a personality thing and guys just don't like him. I don't know. I'm just baffled by the strategy and the approach. Like there are guys right now that, what do you know, Ron? There are guys right now that should have offers that don't.
Yeah, I agree.
Adam Guthrie. I mean, that Adam Guthrie's been he's been the poster child for what's wrong with the strategy for the last 4 or 5 days, and it's spot on.
What they did with Will Conroy too.
No, definitely we agree. We had a good chat about it yesterday about just the recruiting strategy and how it's not working, and hopefully the beat does not fall on the sword for.
Oh, well, I'm glad you said that. I'm officially retiring that phrase on this show, so there's no confusion. We are no longer saying the beat. So when we talk about someone on this show that covers Ohio State with a credential, I will from now on be saying their name exactly on this show. So there's absolutely no confusion. I don't want there to be confusion with the people on the beat that we do like. There are plenty that we don't. But from now on, when we say, we are no longer saying the beat on this channel. If we're talking about someone credentialed to talk about this show or to talk about this team, we will say their name.
That's
and
good.
Make sure when you guys say ours, you're ready for the clapback. So we're not afraid to get on camera, show our face, and say your name. So,
did something happen this week to implement this new rule?
We didn't want to bring down the vibes of this show, but boy, do we have an explosive show to start next week once our guest week is over, because there's plenty to address, and they will all be addressed by name next Monday. So just you wait.
They may or may not have happened behind a paywall, Dan.
Yeah, exactly.
We all have friends on the beat.
Oh, I know what happened. I was being facetious.
Oh, all right. All right.
But I know Ron wants to get to expectations for you for the season. So real quick.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts. I mean, there's a lot of expectations. I mean, we've used the phrase natty or bust around here a ton. The season's here. I mean, this is our final Saturday was just this past Saturday without college football. We have college football for the rest of the year. So what are your expectations for this team? High hopes for the Buckeyes, new coaches, new quarterback. But the expectations are sky high with all of these guys returning on defense. What are you guys expecting from this team this year?
Chad, can I go first?
Absolutely.
All right, man. So to me, I am a natty or bust guy. Now, to me, that doesn't mean Natty or Ryan's fired, but just with the expectations, with what's been put into this team, with who's come back, with who we got out of the portal, with Chip Kelly, with as many returners that we have on the third-ranked defense coming out of last year, to me, it's a natty or bust year. Unfortunately, it's going to be harder than it's ever been to win that natty this year with the 12-team playoff. I mean, if you think about that stretch, you're going from the cheaters up north to the Big Ten title game, to an off week if you win the Big Ten title game, to 3 really good games, strong games, most likely against SEC, teams. So it's going to be harder than ever. But to me, there's no excuses this year. I do think Ryan's taking a different approach. I don't know. Have y'all seen that movie Miracle?
Yeah.
Accuse him.
There's
guy,
that.
Not me.
there's that scene where Herb Brooke goes, I'm your coach, I'm not your friend. If you need one of those, Craig's right there. I think Ryan's taking that approach with these guys. I don't think he's the most well-liked guy in the building, and I don't think he cares anymore. I think he's got an assassin mentality. You've seen it with him bringing in Sane. You've seen it with some of the decisions he made. He was decisive with the QB decision this year as opposed to last year. Brought in Chip, a lot of resources. To me, it's natty or bust. And I don't know, I'm starting to see a lot of projections where we're like 11-1, but win the Big Ten title. I think everybody's assuming we're going to lose to Oregon in that case. I don't even feel good about a blemish on the record this year. I really don't. I want to see a 0 at the end in the loss column when the dust settles this year.
Chad.
Yeah. So I'm always careful with the natty or bust thing, but I agree that with what we returned, who they brought back, who they brought in, and then the changes with the bringing in Chip Kelly, if we don't win it, something went horribly wrong. So, I do think that winning 15 or 16 games in a row is really hard. Ask the New England Patriots. It's tough to go undefeated. The expectations are the highest that I can ever remember since 2015, when they returned, Cardale and Zeke and Bosa and all those guys. So I don't remember a more hyped Ohio State team in all my time being around Ohio State football. So if they don't win it, I'm not on the fire Ryan Day train at all. I'm not even at the station, but the fact that they didn't, there are going to be some, and we know that Dan and I know this for a fact, there will be some boosters that are very, very angry. So, and you don't like angry boosters.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I'll chime in there. We had talked about it when Anna, when he came on, about is it okay for this team to lose a game? And I looked down this schedule. I think this game against Oregon, and that's usually the one that people go to throughout the season, is probably the second most important to the Natty, maybe even the most important going forward, because you talk about Oregon coming in with this momentum, all the hype about Dan Lanning, talked about him the other day, and just the trajectory of that program with unlimited resources, unlimited money. And it's like, if you lose to Oregon this year, regardless if it's a close game or not, the momentum they're going to come off with going into the next season, even if they don't win a Natty or, win the Big Ten, but the fact that they've slain the dragon of the Big Ten and maybe end up with one loss or something, I think that is a dangerous setting for the future if you give that program any more momentum. So I think that is a must win for Ohio State. I'd say with the Natty or bust clause, I'm almost never natty or bust. I don't like to measure that, because if I look down the record, I could say, as well as I talk about Kirby and that team, I think Michigan last year avoided the monster in Kirby. I think every time Ohio State goes to the playoffs, we find a way to play the Avengers. Like, they give us the toughest. We play everybody who could possibly beat us. I think Michigan avoided that last year. But I think if we go into a natty against Kirby, and Ryan Day's shown he can go toe-to-toe, so maybe that neglects my argument. But I think Kirby is a little bit higher than Ryan Day at this point, in my opinion. And if we lost in a close game to Georgia, I wouldn't say, oh, this season was a failure.
No, we got to win the Natty. It's a failure if we don't.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going there.
It'll be a disappointment. I guess we can debate if disappointment and failure are two different things. Hey, that boy Johnny, I was waiting for him, man. I had my asterisks loaded in the chat in the reply bar. He came in late this morning, but I always try to get my asterisks in there when he posts his trophy. It's all in good fun.
Shout out to our guy, Johnny, one of our Michigan faithfuls. We appreciate him tuning into the show. But we definitely appreciate our guys, Dan and Chad from the Best Damn Pod in the Land, joining us today. This was an awesome discussion. It was a great time having you guys on the show. We definitely have to do this again during the season. Plenty of stuff to talk about, and definitely like to cut through the the fluff and propaganda that is posted regarding this team. So it's always fun to talk the real with you guys. I appreciate you guys joining the show. Let the people know where they could find you guys at.
Yeah, so we're on Twitter. Our hashtags are up there, or hashtags, our ats are on the screen. So the at the best damn pond in the land is on Twitter, just like that. iShark8 for Dan, and then we're on YouTube. I have been pushing our shows to Spotify now, so you can find us on Spotify, but it's just the best damn pod in the land on YouTube.
Yeah, we've got a push to get to our first 500 subscribers going. So we've had a good little run. That's that first milestone that we're looking for. You know, we like to say we started this thing for shits and giggles, but it gets pretty addictive pretty quick, Buckeye Nations. And then, the pod world is really cool. We've got some good friends now. So yeah, go ahead, get over there, give us a like, give us a subscription, and keep supporting these guys as well.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Ron Q. This was great. I absolutely loved it. So thank you.
We had a great time, and a big thank you for you guys joining us. There's 250 people in here. If you guys aren't subscribed to the Best Damn Pod in Land, make sure you guys go check that out and stay up to date with all of the Buckeye information. Q, I am 1 minute away from a meeting, so let the people know where they could find you and do it quickly.
Right. Appreciate everybody. Y'all know the deal. See Boy Quitting on Twitter, Find It Johnson, most other places, in minor league films up here. Appreciate the chat coming in. Y'all did a great job today. The chat was vibing, so I appreciate y'all. Throw it to Ron.
Absolutely. Big thanks to the chat. We appreciate you guys tuning in every day and supporting us in the mornings. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at 2Ts. It's right there on the screen, 2_TEES. It is guest week. We have another guest tomorrow, a big surprise guest. We're not going to tell you who it is. Make sure that you tune in and check out the guest tomorrow. And then, of course, we have Pat Cahill of Menace to Sports on Friday. So appreciate the guys from the Best Damn Pod in the Land for joining us here on the Buckeye Roast. It is guest week. Make sure that you continue to tune in. If you missed the Chimney episode yesterday, make sure you check that out. A big thank you to everyone. Like, comment, and subscribe on the video. Go Bucks and OH.
Go Bucks.